I believe the feet is. I don't think these people know what that means. Can I get a witness? Are you ready to fight? Are you willing to bleed? Ready to bleed.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Power of the Community. Our goal with this show is just to introduce you to people who have made an impact on our community. We want to hear their stories and how they got to where they are today. I'm so excited about our guest today. He's the founder and CEO of TrueScripts, Nathan Gabhart. Nathan's a graduate of Washington High School and Purdue University with a bachelor's in pharmacy. He's married to Beth, and they have 4 children, Caitlin, Ashley, Ethan, Nathaniel. And in 2014, Nathan started TrueScripts. It's a prescription benefits management company where they provide prescription benefits to small and large organizations with respect, integrity, innovation, and service. In just a little over 6 years, Nathan, you built a company that's said to be the best place to work in Davis County. Nathan, it's good to have you on the show.
Thanks, Tracy. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for all you do for the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, first and foremost, it's crazy times right now, right? It's kind of some uncharted territory for everybody. Everybody in family, are you guys safe, healthy?
Oh, we truly are. Yeah, safe, healthy, and just truly blessed, and hope you and yours is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, I'm going to dive right in. I know one of the things I did leave out is you're also a commissioner for our county. And how long have you been doing that?
This is my second term, so I believe this is my sixth year, I believe, as a county commissioner. Yes. So
you are you definitely have not so much time on your plate for things like this. So I appreciate you taking the time for us. Nathan, I want to dive in a little deeper to tell me about what 15-year-old Nathan Gabhart was. Where'd you grow up? Kind of what were your thoughts then?
Sure. I'm 15 years old. I lived down in Vincent's Avenue, and I think 1406 Vincent's Avenue to be exact. And I was a stock boy for Campton's Groceries, and Doug Campton was my boss, and Elaine and Jim Campton were still alive then. And as a stock boy there on Mondays and mowed grass, and just was living that typical life. Had a bike and had gas at the gas can, and just kind of living the dream. And I knew we were poor, but just really didn't know how poor. But yeah, just always had a good strong work ethic, and just was blessed to have people in my life who always pushed me, and even from a young age.
Yeah. So if I walked into Washington Junior High at that time, right, in the 8th grade classroom, what if I looked at Nathan Gabhart, like what would I take away from who Nathan was?
You'd see a very shy kid, the smallest kid in the class, shortest kid in the class. I think I wrestled at 98 pounds on the wrestling team, and until I beefed up to 103 the next year.
Right.
So yeah, just a shy kid, but always liked to make people laugh. I always was that quiet kid who'd crack the joke that only a few people could hear, and then they would repeat it. But definitely not a troublemaker by any means, but definitely not an angel by any means. And when I think back to some of the stuff that we did, and what we considered was fun back then, it was someone was looking over me, but no, good kid, good student. Yeah.
Yeah, I've talked to obviously a few people in the community, and some of your friends you ran around with, they're still here, right? And so you got like Pete Aldridge and stuff, and I know Pete talks very highly of you, and you guys kind of lived kind of similar areas, similar kind of upbringing-ish type thing. Sure. What were your parents like growing up? Were they very supportive of you? Did they kind of give you that work ethic, that drive, or how'd you come about that?
A good question. I grew up in a single parent family. A twin sister and 3 brothers, and my dad, he left really early on. We're maybe 10 or 12. I can't really remember. So definitely not the Cleaver household by any means. Yeah. There was some domestic abuse, and that we unfortunately got to witness, but had a very strong mom and a very strong work ethic. And we knew just from an early age, I call it the flames of failure. And to me, I had nothing against the West End. We had a lot of pride back then. I mean, the houses and the properties looked a lot different than they did, a couple of weeks ago when I go through the area often. But I always knew I wanted more than what I had at that time. I always had a desire for nicer things, Levi's versus Wranglers or whatever it was. But and I knew to get that I had to work. And it's one thing my dad taught me early on is that anytime you do a job, never get paid until the job's done. Otherwise, unfortunately, he didn't practice that same advice. But I'm glad he passed that on. But I had a good support system around me. I always made sure that I had plenty to do, plenty to work on.
Now you talked about mowing some lawns and stuff. So obviously, with you being the founder and owner of True Scripts, there, how was that entrepreneurial spirit kind of in you from early on? And was that kind of derivative of the fact that you knew, hey, if I wanted some of those Levi's or finer things, I had to kind of make it myself type thing?
Yeah, I think it was. I don't know where it really came from, but I remember, at lunch, when you would get back from lunch, we'd always have to go to the gym and sit in the gym until the bell rang. I can't remember, closed campus or whatever it was, but you'd be able to leave for a little bit. And I remember going down to the gas station and there was this candy called Spree, and it came in a little like a tube, and it was 35 cents for a 6 or 7 inch tube of candy, and I'd break them into like 6 or 7 pieces and sell them for like a dime or 15 cents in the gym. And I'd make about $1 or $1.25, and every day I'd come home with $3 or $4 of change in my pocket. My mom would always wonder, what in the world are you doing? And then I'd buy 2 or 3 sticks, and then I had a buddy, and I say, hey, you sell it, I'll give you half of what you raise. And so we're walking around selling Spree, those sticks of Spree, and that was. The IRS probably will come and get me now. Taxes on that, but there goes my presidential bids. But
right. I don't know what it is about entrepreneurs, but it seems like every entrepreneur had some candy story, right? To where they were selling some type of candy somewhere.
Yeah, the captive audience, everyone had a dime, but no one, 50 cents or something, that you're talking some money then, but everyone had a nickel or a dime.
That's awesome. I love that story. I love it. Now let's kind of jump forward a little bit to 19, 20-year-old Nathan at Purdue. At that time, what were your dreams? I see you got your Purdue jersey hanging in the back. I won't hold that against you, obviously. But what were kind of some of your dreams and ambitions and goals, even just to make it to Purdue? Like how did that get started in your brain?
Sure. So I started when I worked at Williams's Rexall Drugs there, where Family Dollar is now. They had a restaurant back in the back in the pharmacy, and Joe Spalding was the owner of it. So I worked there in the kitchen and started off on pots and pans, then moved my way up, and then eventually I worked over in the pharmacy on Fridays, and one of his pharmacists were sitting in the restaurant having a cup of coffee, and he was very eccentric, but he was extremely funny. I mean, just naturally funny. So I was sitting there talking to him for a few minutes, and I said, so Art, I think his name was Art, and I was like, so why did you become a pharmacist? He's like, well, Nate, I'm sitting here drinking a cup of coffee, making $19 an hour. Why wouldn't I be? Yeah. And I thought, you know what? I think I want to be a pharmacist. So. Right. So I started working over at Joe and Spalding on Fridays, and then just didn't know what else I wanted to do. So I went to Purdue and enrolled in pre-pharmacy, and it was a disaster. And it made beer was always my drug of choice. Going back to the West End, but fortunately it was nothing else besides beer, and there was plenty else to have access to. So, for full disclosure, I mean, probably from 12, 13 years old, and it's nothing that I would advocate, nothing that I'm proud of, but I think it's extremely important for people to know, because they only see the end point. And they say, boy, I just don't have a family with 3 kids. I don't have a big house. I don't have a business I own. There's no way, I can be like that. and they stereotype people based off the outcome and not the journey.
Yeah.
And the pictures I see when I was 12 and 13, I thought, you guys, it's like a different life. But
Mm.
anyway, went to Purdue, had the best time of my life. My first semester, I made a 3.64, but unfortunately, my mom didn't know we were on the 6.0 system, and
Right.
and it just didn't go well. Didn't go to class, and but then started taking it seriously, and started making straight A's for a few years, and became very involved in the pharmacy profession. And again, your associations affect your elevations. And unbeknownst to me, I got extremely involved in the pharmacy profession as a student. Became the first national officer in the history of Purdue in 1997. And it was just an absolute whirlwind at that point in time. And just truly blessed.
So first year, kind of dove into the college scene, right? What was that turning point? When did you finally say, you know what, I got to really buckle down here because this isn't going the way I want it to?
So it was my second year of pre-pharmacy. I went and I was studying hard, doing well, but that first semester, getting a 1.64 up, it's just such a challenge. So I went and I applied again, and my counselor said, look, I don't think pharmacy's for you. I think you just need to go and somewhere else. And I didn't know, I didn't have a plan B. And I think that's really was my ace in the hole, because I didn't have any other plan. So I went to VU my third year, went to summer school, and then went 93, 94, went to VU. Made a 3.95 on a 4.0 system, right. And came back, applied, should have gotten advanced standing, which meant been one fewer year. I had one of the highest GPAs, but they looked at my first year and said, look, you get a 1.64 here, you get a 3.95 at VU. What's that say about VU? And it really was kind of a punch in the gut. And so I did get accepted, but I had to go an additional year. So I went to pharmacy school for 7 years, and it was a 5-year program at that point in time. And I'll never forget, once I became a national officer, which there was five national officers out of 89,000 pharmacy students in the United States. So it was extremely prestigious. So they were putting me on this pedestal, so to speak. And I kept running into that advisor, and I just kind of stare him down a little bit, like, how do you like me now, type of thing. But he pushed me, he motivated me.
Yeah, that's good, man. I love that. It seems like I hear it over and over again too, with not everybody, but a lot of people is they have some people in their life that just do not believe in them, right? And you can either use that to harm you, which is you agree with them and you don't do anything about it, or you can use it to fuel you, and you say, you know what, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to go out and do this. And it seemed like you kind of had a little bit of that fire inside of you on that one, huh?
Yeah, Tracy, and it really happens on both ends of the spectrum, as they call it. I was white, quote unquote, white trash from the West End, and now I'm an evil 1%er who just takes and takes and takes. So no matter where you're at on that economical spectrum, the comments that you hear, the negativity doesn't change. The topic changes, but the important thing is you are who you are on the inside at the entire through the entire journey. And once you start listening to what people tell you, and the way I quoted it in pharmacy when I graduated pharmacy school is that those who tell you you're great and those who tell you you're awful really could have both harmful impacts to you. You got to know who you are, and if you're feeding that off of your surroundings or off of what people are telling you, then you're setting yourselves up for failure.
So how did you figure that out, though? Because that's not something that everybody just has inside of them, right? That they just kind of have a self-understanding, or they can look inside and not let either or affect them. So was it through some failures? Was it through some successions that you came up with that? Was it through faith? Like how did you finally get grounded in that part?
I think it was early on, just growing up in the West End. I mean, I knew we weren't trash. I knew we weren't anything different than anyone else who grew up in Washington. And just my circle of friends, my friends in elementary school are still my friends today.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Gray at the fire department, and
Yep. Yep.
J.R. Wright, he works down in Branchville and at the prison, and Charlie Vault just passed away in January, but Baron Gilly still over in Monroe City. So some of my friends, that were just good people.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So you graduated in spite of some people at the college, right? And graduated with some pretty high honors. But right after college, is that when you kind of started then at Williams Brothers, or how did that come in place?
Yeah, actually, a step before that, I was honored to receive. They selected one pharmacy student each year to work at Walgreens headquarters up in Deerfield, Illinois. And it was an extremely prestigious internship, and then you go on to corporate management for Walgreens. So I had the luxury in the summer of '97 to go up to Walgreens, work to their headquarters, loved it. Worked with the CEO, the executive team, and just a snotty-nosed kid from the West End in Washington, and
Right.
rubbing elbows with Dan Jornt, who was the CEO at the time. Charles Walgreen was the chairman of the board. So, so I did that, and then they flew me out to Las Vegas, and I said, "Yeah, this is great. I was going to become a district manager in Las Vegas." So, but I had to come back and do my. I had one more year of pharmacy school, and then I had to do my rotations during that year. So, my first rotation was at Williams's in January of '98. I did an 8-week rotation there at the Washington store. Had no idea who the Williams brothers were. The Williams's Rexall drugs was owned by their family, but it wasn't owned. Then they sold it outside the family. But I knew of the family, but did not know the family. So, but after that first week, just loved it. And at that point in time, my lifestyle probably wasn't the best. Work hard, play hard. As a 24, 25-year-old, that's just how I always worked hard and played hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved it. Loved it there. They made me an offer that if I came on board, they'd build a pharmacy in Princeton, and then I'd go and run that store. So I called Walgreens, and I was the first Robert Edmondson intern they had in history to turn down a position. So
Wow.
they called me Rook, and they say, "Well, Rook, when your first check bounces, give us a call." And I told him I would, and so I haven't called them yet. So worked for Williams's for about 16 years.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So obviously friends and family roots probably had something to do with some of that coming back here. Now, where did your lovely wife Beth come into play in all this time frame?
Oh, and again, we went to school together. So she's a '93 grad at WHS. We dated a little bit in high school. But then went our separate ways in '91 when I graduated. And then it was November of '97 at the Oaken Bucket game. Purdue won 56-7. I'll never forget it. It was great. Just blistered them. Mike Allstalt's senior year. And, ran into, she lived across the street. And, again, for full disclosure, then too many times the success stories get too polished and they're like, "Oh, this is what happened." And, but we were there and we ran out of beer. So she lived right across the street. And again, I'm not advocating that lifestyle by any means, but
Right.
I think it's good to be, just to be open and honest. But she lived across the street. So my buddies went and picked her up, and she took them to go get our replenishments. So she came home with us that night because we were all friends. She needed a ride back to school that next day, which was a Sunday. She called me. I begrudgingly said, "All right, whatever." Bloomington, no one goes through Bloomington to go to Purdue, but so dropped her off and said, "Hey, have a nice life," and pulled out and got on Highway 37, and then my timing belt broke. And then had it not been for that timing belt, I never would have called her. And then that literally is what led to her coming and pick me up, and then us talking more. And who knows? But I'm definitely a person of faith now, and everything happens for you, so to speak, and not to you. So that timing belt breaking was the one of the most important events of my life.
Yeah. So it was definitely, it was in college then, that you got reconnected back with Beth. And so did her moving back here in Washington, was that kind of because of you, or did she already have plans, or how did that work out?
Yeah, she's a NICU nurse, so she
Mhm.
has a BSN in neonatal intensive care. So she worked at Riley right out of college, and that was her dream job. And then when I moved to Princeton, then again we were dating. So I graduated. I got my license in July of '98, and actually we got married in November of '98. So she was working in Indianapolis, and then that's when I started working down in Princeton. So she moved down to Princeton, and then we got married in November of '98, and then she started working down in Evansville at that point in time.
Yeah,
So
that's a little shorter drive for that one. Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So you were working at Williams Brothers, you were married, and you were in Princeton. Now, somewhere in between there was a co-foundership of a business, right? And True RX, I believe, is what it was called. Is
Yeah.
that correct? Kind of the same business, same prescription benefits that you're at. How did that start? Whose idea was that? How did that kind of get flowing through Williams Brothers?
Sure. So Mark Williams and I, we were really really close, very close, and we always the PBMs. There's a very adversarial relationship between pharmacies and PBMs and members. It's a very I don't know, fraudulent business sector, in my opinion. So we were sick and tired of being sick and tired of what the PBMs were doing to our members. They're forcing the members to use different pharmacies, to use different medications, and it's all because the PBMs are getting paid by for that. So in 2006, Mark and I, we had been talking for a year or two, about, boy, if we could only do something about it. And then I had a neighbor who said, "Hey, if you guys ever start a PBM, I want to be your first client." And then, Mark and I were just talking, and, he found a consultant online that he was able to reach out to and kind of get the ball rolling. And then I had the client, and then we just kind of just started building it out from there. So it was just a sister company that he and I created. And that got our first client in 2007. And then I served as CEO and co-founder of that company, and then vice president of pharmacy operations on the pharmacy side. So as TrueRx continued to grow, I spent more of my time over on that side, and less of my time on the pharmacy side. And then so that started in 2007, and we built it from there.
Yeah, and then at some point, something sparked you, right? That said, "Hey, you know what? I want to branch off here, and I want to start my own company,
Yeah.
kind of by myself." I know you had help. I know you had a good team that kind of come with you there. But what was the thought process behind that? I'm guessing it was probably a lot of client-centric ideas that might have not have went over very well. You know what I mean?
Well, no, actually, it all evolved from 2010. From 2005 and 2010, it's just there's just I just had an emptiness inside, and didn't know how to solve it, and didn't know what it was. We never grew up faithful. We were the kids where the minister would stop in front of the house, and we'd shut the curtains, and then occasionally mom would make us get in the car with him, and but she went back to bed, and we were those kids. So I just didn't know anything about faith. So and just had this emptiness that, what's my purpose, was this phrase that kept coming back to my head, on what is my purpose, why am I here? Because we're getting financial success, we're building companies, had a wife and kids, but just had an emptiness inside. And then eventually I just went to a retreat at church. And that retreat was probably February of 2010. And it was just a light bulb just went off. I thought the faithful people were born that way. I truly did. I mean, I laugh now when I think about that, but when I just, from the outside looking in, you just think that they were just, I'm not wired that way. I'm not made that way. Right. And so I went to this retreat, and I realized that all these men that I had a great amount of respect for weren't born that way either. And then I started I got faith as a component of my life at that point. Always believed in God, but we went to church and got my ticket stamped each Sunday. And I'm not a Bible thumper by any means, but I think having a faith, regardless of your denomination, is just critically important. And so that happened, and it was profound. And then that's really where the separation began. My lifestyles and my interests changed, and it was from then to 2012 when it started kind of coming to a head that I wanted a different environment, and I wanted a different purpose, and I didn't want more money. I wanted to create change in the community. And now we're looking at changing changes in the world now. So so that's what led it. I didn't really know. There was a lot more unanswered questions that I had at that time than answered questions. I just knew what I was currently doing was not going to work for me.
So this has been like a little over 6 years, right?
Yep.
That True Scripts has been open now. And like I said in the intro, you literally have developed a company that is sought after for workers out there. I hear people say it all the time that, man, True Scripts is a great place to work. And I would deem it one of the best places to work, other than the powerhouse, obviously, but one of the best places to work in Davis County. So tell me the beginning days, because I've started and ran businesses, and it's not easy from the get-go. You talked a lot about people want their polished story out there, and you're trying to give us the truth and the transparency of here's what it really. I'm guessing it wasn't all great from the get-go, but so talk a little bit about the beginning.
Yeah. So the beginning, it was, a lot goes into it. When I was leaving the former companies, my first goal was to buy out my former company that I had co-founded, and just keep that company going. That was the initial goal. And then when I saw that was not a possibility, then I said, well, we'll just do it again. But we'll do it again on a different foundation. We'll do it again without any conflicts of interest. We'll do it again with a purpose-driven mission, and we'll do it again. And we want to be givers and not takers. And so we did. And first year, we lost $500,000, but fortunately, we had capital to help offset that. And then our reputation, our relationships, our integrity, our character that we had built, our relationships we had built with our clients and with our producers out there across the country. They said, look, once you get up on your feet, give us a call. We don't want to be your first client, but we might be your second or third. So once they started coming on, then it was just like floodgates. And then, the team, we had several team members wanted to come over and join us. And so we started off, I think, with 5 employees. And now we have, we'll be up to around 80 by the end of this year. And we have clients and members in all 50 states and Guam and Puerto Rico. So it's just unreal how it happens, but we never had a doubt that we were not going to be successful, because we could care less how much money we make, as long as we were break even. Then we were out on a philosophical mission.
And what was that philosophical mission?
Well, to be givers, to change lives. And with members across the country are in very anxious situations with the cost of their medications, the burdens that the PBMs are putting in place. PBMs are supposed to be negotiating as fiduciary agents on behalf of employers, and yet they own pharmacies. And that's exactly who they're supposed to be negotiating with. So they're negotiating with their sister companies, which was an inherent conflict of interest. And then they're getting paid billions by drug manufacturers to have one drug on their formulary versus another. And some of these pills are the exact same active ingredient. And as pharmacists, we were just sick and tired of being sick and tired, and said, this is ridiculous. To spend $1,000 for a pill that has the exact same ingredient as something that's over the counter is fraudulent. And we had enough of it. We could have made millions and millions of more dollars by doing the exact same thing, but just at a lower level, and still save the client some money. but we wanted to conduct the business as if God was watching. And we just wanted to have to be givers. So we are highly sought after, but I tell every applicant there's a catch. To work in that environment, to where good enough is never good enough, to where you can never give enough, that's hard. And people are like, oh, well, the pay is great, the benefits are great, and the way you treat your employees is great. And those are all true. But that only works if we get more out of the team than we put into it. And we only get that if we hire that. And we can't train it. You cannot train it. You cannot train a giver's mentality. You have it. And a lot of people do have it. They just don't know it. But we've hired a couple of takers. But since 2013, I think we've terminated 5 employees in 7 years, which is pretty phenomenal.
That's crazy. Let's talk a little bit about that culture that everybody raves about, right? And you kind of hit on a little bit, but there's obviously one thing to have it written on your walls and to talk about. It's another thing to get the buy-in, right? From that. And so how did you foresee that from the beginning to say, you know what, if we're going to do this, we're going to have good people behind us. We're going to have good people working with us. And how can we create that culture? Like, what were some of the steps that you took? This is purely selfish on my part because I want to hear it and I want to kind of glean from that.
Well, good question. I mean, from my recollection, I kind of had the Mike Tyson mentality where he'd show up to the ring in black shorts, no robe, no stool in his ring, his corner, and he has had black trunks on and black shoes, and let's just get to work. And the slogans and the books you read, and that's fine, that's great, but that's pretty superficial. We wanted action. We wanted to be able to see it. If we can't see it, how do we know it's happening? So we wanted to make sure that, so for instance, some of the things we did from day one is we said, we're going to tithe 10% of our profits from day one. And when we lost $500,000, it was the easiest decision that we made that year. We're like, oh yeah, sure. Throw that on there. That's perfect. So, but we've kept that in place from day one. So that's probably the greatest thing that we did is we put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, and we have to tithe. And we're not tithing to receive anything. And that's the key difference. Some people give in order to receive. And you can tell it. You can tell it by it's your limbic system, in my opinion, which is your intuition. That's your gut. And when someone's doing something for you, you know if it's genuine or not, right? Because you feel it. You can't describe it. Your limbic system has no vocabulary skills, so you can't tell someone how you feel, why you feel that way. You just know you feel that way. So we wanted to have true givers and not receivers. And so, and the crazy thing about it, Tracy, is, and you know this probably more better than anybody, is the more you give genuinely, the more you receive. And I can give you countless and countless and countless of examples of where we gave monetarily or we gave with our time or our talent. And then a week later, the largest client in our history reached out and said, hey, we want to come on board. In some cases, it doubled the size of our company. We're just scratching our head and saying, and I'm teasing my executive team, letting them know it was my well thought out strategic plan, but it's all through our actions. So what we do at True Scripts that's a little unique, perhaps, is one, we tithe the first 10%. We don't broadcast it. I mean, I've shared it with you just for all transparency, but other than that, it's something that I really don't want us to be putting on social media, because why would you want it? Why, as long as he knows, that's all that matters. Mm-hmm. So we did that. We have a chief character officer, and Nicole Rubel, and she's really our moral compass of the company. She's the one that guides us as far as our philanthropy, as far as our volunteer events. So we have volunteer activities throughout the year where we go and use our time and our talent to give back. It's not mandatory by any means, but for full disclosure, I definitely, if someone consistently doesn't show up, then yeah, there may be something we need to talk to that person on, hey, are you busier than we are? And you don't have to go. If you feel you have to go, then there may be some other issues, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So we do that. We do give all of our team members on that 10% of the profits. We do give all of our team members a portion of that for them to give to their charities of choice, and that's been fun to see. But again, you can see with, for full disclosure with ours, I think we have 65 employees right now. Some wait till December and just kind of dump it to whoever they dump it to. Others are much more methodical, and it's just interesting. It's just interesting for us to see. So, but faith is extremely important to us. I mean, we've got Christians, we've got Muslims, or Hindus that work for us, or some of our data scientists, and that's fine. We don't care which God you worship, but we do feel it's important that you have a faith life of some sort.
Yeah, you guys even do some things that I've heard about as like a Bible study in there type things where, again, not mandatory, but it's offered, and just you really, and I'm sure putting Nicole in there to kind of gauge that and to see that, or putting someone in that role really helped out, because she can be there, she can understand kind of what people like, what they don't like, and try to boost that morale. I'm guessing that was a big move whenever that took place.
Yeah, it's important. And, just like any company, some things start off with a flair and then they kind of flounder. We all, the devil has a very effective way of making us all busy. And sometimes we get too busy for that stuff. But it's good to know it's there. At our sync up meetings, we always have a prayer call out for any prayer request. And, we it's not an in your face type of thing, but we realize that everybody needs each other to get through this world. Yeah.
What's some advice that you would give a teenager looking to maybe start or run their own business? Now, the setup for this question is I get a lot of teenagers, right, that say, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they say, I just want to be rich. I just want to have a lot of money. Yeah. And I'm like, well, let's start with how do you make your first dollar, right? And let's go from there. So what kind of advice would you give some teenagers who are like, you know what, the only path to make a lot of money is to own my own business, so I just want to start something?
Yeah. Well, it's I guess the premise of the question is if your goal in life is to get rich, you're going to be miserable. So no matter what your endeavor, no matter what your field of endeavor, if your goal is to get rich, you will be miserable, regardless of your field of endeavor. Your goal has to be a purpose. If you do not know why you're doing what you're doing, you will not be satisfied. And if your why is to get rich, what's going to happen is once you get rich, you're going to see how it feels like. You're going to see the loneliness. You're going to see the people coming to you that with ulterior motives. You're going to see looking over your shoulder periodically. You're going to see, you got to have a $600 a year an hour attorney, because if someone comes on your property and sprains their ankle, that's a $2 million lawsuit. And you're going to be thinking about that stuff 24 hours a day if your goal is to get rich. You will be miserable. Anyone in the world who feels money buys happiness has not had money. And having money is wonderful. Having money is so de-stressful at times. Having money is much better than not having money. Mm-hmm. And I've lived on both sides of it. And so money is not a bad thing. When money controls you and when money is the ultimate goal, that's when it's a bad thing. But you got to have a mission where you're trying to change lives. You got to have a purpose where this gets your juices going. You don't really know why. Too many people lay out too much data and too many strategic plans and too many performas and says, okay, this is, it looks like a duck. It sounds like a duck. It walks like a duck. So the data tells you you're in the right direction, but in your gut, you're like, I'm just not sure it's a duck. Well, if that gut doesn't align with the data, you've got to figure it out. And then also there's the fear of failure. I forget who said it, but the fear of failure has killed more dreams than failure itself. And that's the key thing. I had no business going to pharmacy school. I had no business being on the wrestling team.
Right.
I had no business starting a business. I mean, give me a break. But, says who? So you got to shut out the external. You got to shut out the external voices, but you also have to have a trusted inner core, people you can talk to, people who will listen and say, boy, this is why I think I want to do this. And whether it's making a coffee coaster or whatever it is, as long as you have passion. Now it's got to be a good business model. You got to be providing value to somebody or something. But just take your time. Like Martin Luther King said it. I'll butcher the quote, but if you're going to mop that floor like no one's ever mopped that floor. And if you're going to be a leader, an office manager, be a manager like no one's ever seen before. And if you're going to be a president like no one's ever seen before. But people are too good. People are too good to sweep the floor. People are too good to pick the trash up out in front of True Scripts. And yeah, in case any of my employees hear that, yeah, that you too. So people are
want a job. They got a job, huh? Picking up trash outside of your place.
every opportunity I get, I walk in with hands full of trash. And I don't say a word. I walk over to the trash can. I put it in. I look around, make sure everyone saw me. I say, "Yep, that's right. You all walked past it."
Yep.
So yeah, just some advice is, you just can't be too good and start low and slow. I mean, we wanted to stay under the radar as long as we could. We still are relatively under the radar. I think people would be surprised with how large of a company we actually are in Washington, Indiana. But we like that low profile status. It allows you to make mistakes and stub your toe without, it being on national news, so to speak. And if your goals don't make you a little nervous, then they're probably not big enough. So, but that goal has to be divided into pieces. And my wife and I, we do long distance triathlons, and some of these triathlons can be very lengthy. And if you show up and you put your goggles on and you say, okay, I'm going to do a 140.6 mile race today, mentally you just shut down. But if you say, hey, I'm going to get to that first buoy, and then I'm going to get my stride going, and then I'm going to breathe every 3 strokes, I'm going to breathe. And then you get to the next buoy, and then you say, okay, I just need to make the turn and head back home. And then you get out of the water and you get on the bike, and you say, okay, let's just get to mile 10. And then let's get to the halfway point. Next thing you know, you got a 112-mile bike ride done. And you say, okay, let's go get our running shoes on. And let's go for a little run here. And then you break down and you say, okay, let's get to 6 miles, then 13, and then 18. And then the darkness really sets in, and then you start hearing the crowd, and next thing you know, you're an Ironman. So you got to have goals. You got to have the right mindset. Even today, there's self-doubt that I have often. There's loneliness. Are we doing things the right way? You're never there. And that's why I think is a common misperception. Once you reach a certain economical status where, financially, yeah, we don't have to ever work again. But that's not why we do what we do. But we're all human beings, and sticks and stones may break my bones, but words hurt most of all. And there's a lot of truth to that.
So tell me a goal that you have right now in the stage of your career, stage of your life. Obviously, a 6-year-old business is not that old. And they say you make it past 5, right? That's kind of the goal is let's just try to make it past 5. Well, once you hit that 6 year, now you're like, let's just get past 10. And then after that, it kind of rolls. But what's a goal for Nathan Gabhart specifically, not necessarily the company, but you specifically that you've set forth to kind of keep pushing you forward?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we're really kind of in the midst of redefining that, because you have to set new goals as you continue on your journey, and that's really what I'm working on now. I mean, I had goals of let's get involved locally, and become an elected official. Let's see if we can make some good changes there. let's start a business and let's get some traction. I wanted to finish an Ironman. And now that, 6 years into the commissioners, the company is there. And I've competed in 7 Ironmans now. And now it's like, okay, now what? And now that's kind of the next goal. So right now, really what I'm focusing on now is more the philanthropy part of it. We use the Davies County Community Foundation currently, and they've been phenomenal, and we'll always use them to some component. But we also are looking at setting up a private foundation and getting the kids around that table of giving, and so that they can see giving money away is not quite as easy as people may think, because there's the need obviously outweighs the availability of funds. But so as far as my life goes, obviously I just want to be as good of a commissioner as I can. There's no thoughts of any other offices. My political career, I'm pretty outspoken, but which is great. Don't ever run for an office if you're not able to speak your mind. But yeah, the goals right now, really, we're entering a different chapter. I got a daughter getting ready to move to California in June, one in Cincinnati in college, and then 2 boys still in school. So just really looking at the philanthropy side of it, and then figuring out how more mission trips. Did more mission trips this year, and but yeah, it's that's a good question, Tracy, because it's I'm entering a phase of uncertainty, so to speak. The past 5 or 6 years, I've just been laser focused, and now that we've checked those boxes, now we're like, okay, now what's left? So there's a lot left. I just got to figure out what that is.
Yeah, you're pretty young. you got a lot of, Lord willing, you get a lot of life ahead of you. That's for sure. And with a young company, and even your family is pretty vibrant and young. I really want to. I hope that teenagers are watching this and hearing this. I mean, if you've picked up on the subtle cues of all the things that Nathan has going on. And with the Ironman, that takes training, that takes a lot of work. You can't be like me and a big dude and just go out and do one. You've got to start somewhere. And then how he just bite-sized pieces. He takes that down and he just bites it a little at a time. My famous quote, what I love the most, I didn't say this, but what I use the most is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And because when you see something so huge like a triathlon where you bike, swim, and run, or leaving a kind of a comfortable spot in a company that's been established for years, where they started kind of their own sister company, and it would still going on, I'm guessing, right? Like that's a big deal. And then to start a new one while you're in the same town, even though you're providing across the globe with this, but that's a big deal to take those little bite-sized pieces. So don't expect at 18 years old that you're going to become a millionaire. Don't expect at 18 years old that you're going to be successful at everything. There's trials, there's failures, there's successes, there's good, there's bad. But so I hope people are picking up on that, because I am and I've been there. One last question that I ask everybody, and if there was a teenager that wants to be an employee at TrueScripts, what is the advice? What would you tell them? Hey, this is what we look for in a young person coming in. This is what we want, and how to help them kind of do that as they start their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. So we call those the intangibles. We want work ethic. We want talent. We want intellect, and we want character. Everything else we can train. And like I tell my executive team often when we're doing interviews, that if we only hired people that have experience, none of us around the table would have ever been hired.
That's right.
So experience is only a certain component of it, but really it's the work ethic and who are you as an individual. And that's a serious question that only that individual can answer. But we have a number of different tools we run them through in order to get an inner glimpse. We do a cultural index test, which will give us kind of an inner perspective of who that person is. So we have a very stringent hiring process where it's very difficult to get hired, because once we get you, we want you for life. But you just have to just be who you are. During an interview, you try to sell this persona of who you think the employer wants to hire. Tell the employer who you are, the good and the bad, and be open, be honest, because that honesty is directly proportional to your integrity. And if something didn't go well in your life, tell them about it. And then I don't care about the failure. I want to know what did you do because of that failure. It's not how many times you fell down. It's how many times did you get back up? Because you're going to get knocked down a lot at True Scripts. We all do. It's just the nature of our business. But how did you get up?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Nathan, man, I appreciate you taking time. This has been a great, I hope, like I said, I hope kids, teens, adults, I hope they're going to listen to this and they're going to grab some of those things that you've talked about just to apply to their life and to hopefully push them forward and where they're at. So I just appreciate you. Thank you so much, Nathan.
Well, thanks, Tracy. And I'm just a phone call away if anyone needs anything. So please reach out.